I don't know if I was a mistake, but if I go by what my father said the day my mother told him she was pregnant, I can guess the answer. You did this on purpose, didn't you, Lisa? You think this baby will make me stay? My father snarled, his eyes burning with anger. My mother, only 26 at the time, stood frozen in the cramped living room, her arms wrapped around her stomach as if trying to shield me from his cruel words. My name is Emily, and even before I was born, my existence was a problem. My father, Mark, was never the family man type. He lived recklessly, spent money without a second thought, and was always chasing something new, something exciting, anything but the responsibilities of being a husband and father. He met my mother at a weekend party, and 6 months later, they rushed into marriage for a love that, perhaps, never truly existed. A child like me was never part of his plans. The first years of my life were filled with endless arguments. My mother longed for stability, while my father only wanted to escape anything that tied him down. They fought about money, about unpaid bills, about my father coming home late, smelling of alcohol. Sometimes, I was the reason for their fights. She needs a father, Mark. You can't just keep running away, my mother screamed one night. My father only scoffed. A father? What do you expect me to be, some perfect role model? Sorry, but that's not the life I signed up for. And so, the fights went on for the first 4 years of my life. I don't remember much, but the faded memories still haunt me. The sound of shattering glass, my mother's muffled sobs behind closed doors, the irritated look in my father's eyes whenever he glanced at me. Until one day, my mother decided to end it all. When I was 4, she filed for divorce. And by the time I turned 5, my father was gone without a word. No new address, no phone number, no birthday card, no child support. He vanished as if he had never existed, leaving my mother and me in our old apartment in a small Texas town. The neighbors whispered about my mother, about how she had tied down the wrong man. My mother never spoke of him again, except in moments of anger. A coward, she would say, not a shred of responsibility. Growing up, I learned one thing. Sometimes, family isn't where you find warmth. Sometimes, it's just a place where people leave you behind without looking back. If there was one thing my father left me, it was Grandma Margaret. My mother never spoke about my father, but Grandma Margaret did. She was the only person from his side of the family who still cared about me. When I was little, I didn't know much about her. Just that she would visit our tiny apartment, bringing cookies wrapped in foil and a sad look whenever she saw my mother. Whenever she came, my mother would greet her coldly and find an excuse to stay busy, avoiding sitting with her for too long. Grandma Margaret never reacted to my mother's coldness. She would only smile, bend down, brush my brown hair aside, and say, "You have your father's eyes, Emily." Every weekend, she would take me to her house. A small place, but so much warmer than where I lived. It was a completely different world. No fights, no heavy silence, just the scent of peppermint tea and stories about the past. She told me about my father's childhood. About how he was once a mischievous but bright boy, full of dreams. "Before he became a terrible man, your father was a good child," she said once, her voice heavy with sadness. I loved my weekends at her house. She let me help her bake, read books with me in her sunlit living room, and sometimes we would just sit together in silence. Grandma Margaret never asked about my mother or my life at home. She was simply there. Patient, gentle. Something I had never had with my mother. But when I turned 8, everything changed. One Tuesday evening, my mother got a phone call. I remember she was cooking dinner, and when she heard the voice on the other end, she froze. I had never seen her face turn so pale. "Grab your coat, Emily," she said, her voice unfamiliar. "We need to go to your grandmother's house." My breath caught in my throat. This was the first time my mother was taking me there instead of just letting Grandma pick me up. That night, her usually warm home felt different. She lay in bed, looking smaller than ever. A stack of documents sat on the wooden table beside her, and a man I didn't recognize, who I later learned was her lawyer, Mr. Peterson, stood quietly in the corner. "Lisa, Emily, thank you for coming," she said, her voice weaker than usual, but still carrying that familiar kindness. "There's something important I need to say." My mother rarely listened to her, but tonight, she sat down without a word of protest. That scared me more than anything else. Grandma Margaret took a slow, deep breath before speaking. "I don't have much time left, and I need to set things in order. This house and part of my assets will go to your aunt, Irene. But—" she paused, turning to me with a soft look. "I've set up an education fund for you, Emily. It will help you go to college, to build a future that no one can take away from you." I stared at her, not fully understanding. But my mother did. I saw her sit up straight, her hands clenched on her lap. And for the first time that night, I felt something from her. Not sadness, but suspicion. "Education fund?" my mother asked, her voice no longer hesitant. Mr. Peterson nodded. "This money can only be used for educational purposes. When Emily turns 18, she will have full control over it." I didn't realize it at the time, but in that moment, something shifted in my mother. A long silence filled the room. Grandma Margaret sighed, taking my hand, her gaze warm but weary. "I just want you to have a chance, Emily. No matter what happens, I hope you remember that I always believe in you." That night, as my mother and I left Grandma Margaret's house, I turned back for one last look. I didn't know why, but I felt like I had to remember that moment. As if, somehow, I already knew it would be the last time I saw her like this. Grandma Margaret passed away not long after. It all happened too fast. One day she was telling me stories about my father, and the next, she was in the hospital. A week later she was gone. Her funeral was small and simple, with only a handful of relatives and close neighbors. I stood beside my mother, clutching her hand, but she didn't hold mine back. Ever since Grandma Margaret had announced the education fund, I had sensed something change in her. After the funeral, life went on as if nothing had happened. But deep down, I knew something was coming. A storm I couldn't yet predict. 2 years later it arrived. My mother met Daniel, a successful man in finance. He was tall, well-dressed, drove a sleek car, and always carried a charming smile. Unlike my father, Daniel was organized and responsible. Or at least, that's what my mother believed. They had known each other for less than a year when my mother announced they were getting married. "Daniel is a good man, Emily," she said over dinner. "He's going to give us a better life." I didn't argue. Not because I believed her, but because I had long since accepted that my opinions didn't matter in her decisions. But what surprised me the most was that Daniel had a daughter my age. Her name was Madison. When they moved in with us, I was excited. I had always wanted a sibling. Someone to share movie nights with, to exchange secrets with. Someone who might understand me in ways my mother never did. I cleaned up our room, placed a small welcome sign on Madison's bed, and arranged my favorite books on the shelf, hoping she liked reading as much as I did. But when Madison walked in, she barely glanced at the room, wrinkled her nose, and turned to Daniel. "Oh, I have to share a room with her?" she asked, her tone dripping with displeasure. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and smiled. "If you don't like it, sweetheart, I'll make other arrangements for you." My mother was there too. I turned to her, expecting her to say something, anything. But she only nodded. "If Madison wants her own space, I think we can make that happen." And just like that, Madison got her own room. And I quickly realized it wasn't just the room. My mother wasn't mine anymore either. Madison became the center of everything. My mother cared for her in ways she never had for me. Madison wanted to try dance? My mother immediately enrolled her in the most expensive class in town. Madison was into fashion? My mother spent entire weekends taking her shopping, their arms filled with designer bags. And me? I wore clothes from the clearance rack at the mall. I walked home alone, did my homework in an empty room, and ate dinner in silence while my mother and Daniel laughed with Madison. Every day, I felt myself fading away. One time, I proudly brought home a perfect score on my math test. I stood at the dinner table, holding up the paper, hoping for a small moment of recognition. "Mom, I got an A+ on my test." She glanced up and smiled, but before she could say anything, Madison interrupted. "Mom, I just got chosen for the lead group in my dance class." And just like that, the conversation shifted. "That's amazing, sweetheart," my mother beamed, pulling Madison into a hug. The test paper trembled in my hand. That was the moment I realized I didn't matter anymore. My mother didn't need me. Madison had taken my place. Or maybe, she had never wanted me there to begin with. I can't pinpoint the exact moment I knew I wasn't part of this family anymore. Maybe it was when Madison walked in with brand new designer shoes, while I still wore my scuffed sneakers. Or maybe it was when my mother took Madison to a spa weekend and left me home with a pile of textbooks. But perhaps the clearest moment was one night when I overheard my mother and Daniel talking in the kitchen. "Madison should attend Westbridge Academy," Daniel said firmly. Westbridge was one of the most prestigious private schools in the area. Outrageously expensive and filled with wealthy students. "We'll make it work, won't we, Lisa?" My mother was silent for a few seconds. Then she sighed. "Yes, of course, Madison deserves the best environment." I stepped into the kitchen, my chest heavy. "What about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother turned to look at me, momentarily surprised, as if she had forgotten I was there. "You'll continue at Lincoln High, Emily, it's still a good school." I had already expected that answer, but it didn't stop the wave of disappointment from washing over me. "But if Madison gets to go to Westbridge, why can't I?" I asked, refusing to back down. Daniel spoke before my mother could. "Emily, you're doing great at Lincoln, there's no need for you to change schools." My mother nodded in agreement, her eyes fixed on the coffee cup in front of her. "Westbridge isn't the right fit for you, Emily. You'll be fine in public school." Fine. That was the word they always used for me. I didn't need the best. I just needed to be fine. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. I knew I couldn't change the way they saw me. I would never be Madison in their eyes. I wouldn't get to attend an elite school. I wouldn't be given the best opportunities. But I could still take control of my own future. I stopped trying to win my mother's attention. I stopped showing off my grades. Stopped trying to join family conversations where I was always pushed aside. Instead, I focused on my studies. I buried myself in books, spent more time in the library than at home. I joined the academic decathlon team, signed up for the debate club, sought out teachers for extra guidance. I couldn't change their favoritism, but I could carve out my own path. And I did. By senior year, I had the highest grades in my class, earned praise from my teachers, and was even nominated for Student of the Year. I wasn't doing it to make my mother proud anymore. I did it because I deserved it, whether they cared or not. 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, my mother called me downstairs with a tone I didn't recognize. I knew something was wrong the moment I walked in. Daniel sat stiffly on the couch. My mother sat across from me, her expression tense. And Madison, unsurprisingly, was seated next to her father. But this time, she wasn't looking at me with annoyance. Instead, she seemed expectant. My mother gestured to the empty chair in front of them. "Sit down, Emily, we need to talk." Slowly, I sat, feeling the tension thick in the air. Daniel spoke first. "Emily, we know you're about to enter an important stage in your life. College, your future, this is a big milestone." I nodded, waiting to see where this was going. "The thing is," my mother interjected, her voice softer, almost calculated, "Madison is also preparing for college, and things haven't gone as we hoped." My stomach clenched. I knew what was coming. Daniel sighed. "Madison applied to several prestigious schools, but unfortunately she didn't receive any scholarships. Schools like Brown and UCLA are extremely expensive, and as much as we'd love to help, our finances just can't cover that cost." I clenched my hands in my lap. "And what does that have to do with me?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. My mother exchanged a glance with Daniel before turning back to me. Emily, you have the college fund Grandma Margaret left for you. Her voice was slow, careful. You've been awarded a full scholarship to Texas State University, so you won't need to use that money. But Madison? She does. Madison turned to me then, and for the first time in years her expression wasn't smug or dismissive. Instead, it was filled with fake hope. If you agree to share your college fund with Madison, it would help her attend a better school, my mother continued. Family helps each other, Emily. You understand that, don't you? The room fell silent. I looked at each of them. My mother, who had never truly cared about my future. Daniel, who saw me as nothing more than an extra obligation. And Madison, who had always been given more than I ever had. I took a deep breath. No one moved for a few seconds. My answer rang through the room, clear and unwavering. My mother's expression darkened. Emily, don't be selfish, you don't even need that money. But it's mine, I replied, my voice calm but firm. Grandma left it for me, not for Madison. And it's meant for my education. Not to send her to an expensive school the family can't afford. Daniel's grip tightened on the armrest. Emily, you're being childish. You have the chance to help your sister. She's not my sister, I cut him off. His face turned red. But it was my mother who reacted the most. Emily, she snapped, her voice sharp as a blade. Do you even hear yourself? We are a family. And family helps each other. I let out a dry laugh, unable to hold back the bitterness anymore. Emily, since when was I ever part of this family? When Madison got everything while I was overlooked? When you said I was fine with whatever little you gave me? When Madison got to go to a private school while I was told public school was good enough for me? My mother said nothing, but her eyes turned ice cold. You'll regret this, she said, her voice eerily quiet. I stood up. No, I don't think I will. She rose to her feet as well, staring me down. Then let me be clear, she said, her voice void of emotion. If you don't share that money, then the day you turn 18, you're on your own. You won't be this family's responsibility anymore. My heart pounded in my chest, but I didn't look away. Fine, I said, then turned and walked away without looking back. After that tense family meeting, I knew my time was running out. That night I sat in my room, feeling like the world was closing in on me. I wasn't surprised that my mother had threatened to throw me out, but that didn't make the fear any less real. I had never lived on my own before. I didn't know what life outside would be like. But I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let them take away the last thing I had. The next morning, I called Mr. Carter, the lawyer who had worked with Grandma Margaret. The moment I heard his steady, reassuring voice, I felt a slight sense of relief. Hello, Emily, I've been expecting your call. I hesitated. You knew I'd call? He chuckled. Do you think your grandmother didn't see this coming? It turned out that Grandma Margaret had set up the college fund with such strict conditions that no one but me had any claim to it. Mr. Carter confirmed that the moment I turned 18, I would have full control. No one, not even my mother, could force me to share it with Madison. After that call, I started preparing in secret. I found a small apartment near my university. A modest studio, but enough to start fresh. I secured a part-time job at a cafe just a few blocks away, where the owner promised to hire me as soon as I officially moved in. Each night, after everyone was asleep, I quietly packed my belongings, bit by bit, making sure no one would notice. I wasn't a child clinging to the hope of being accepted by this family anymore. I was preparing to leave. My 18th birthday arrived faster than I expected. That morning, as I walked into the kitchen, my mother was already sitting at the table, arms crossed. Daniel stood beside her, his expression stern. Madison sat quietly, avoiding my gaze. Well, my mother said, her voice sharp. Have you changed your mind? I knew this was the final test. They were waiting, hoping I would cave so they could persuade me one last time. But I stood tall, met my mother's eyes, and said, No. my decision hasn't changed. No one moved at first. Then my mother slowly rose to her feet. Fine, she said, her tone eerily calm. Then get out of my house. My heart pounded, but I refused to let them see any hesitation. I'm ready, I said firmly. I walked up the stairs and grabbed the suitcases I had packed days before. I didn't give anyone the chance to stop me. As I came back down, Madison looked at me. Her expression, unreadable. There was a flicker of surprise, maybe even pity, but also relief. She knew I wouldn't be a problem for her anymore. I walked out the door. No one said goodbye. I left that house without looking back. The early morning air was cold, but I barely felt it. I pulled my suitcase along the sidewalk and got into the taxi I had booked the night before. As we drove away, I glanced into the rearview mirror, watching the house disappear behind me. No one stood at the door. No one watched me leave. But I didn't cry. I had a new apartment, a part-time job, and a college fund that was mine alone. I didn't need them. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. 3 days after I left, I started getting messages. Old classmates, teachers, even neighbors I had barely spoken to. Are you okay? What happened? Is it true what your mom said? I checked Facebook and immediately understood. My mother had posted a long, dramatic message, filled with grief and blame. Today is a heartbreaking day for me and my family. After everything we've done, my daughter has turned her back on us. I raised her, gave her a home, and when the family needed her support, she selfishly refused. She left without a second thought, abandoning her stepfather and sister in disappointment. It's painful to realize I raised such an ungrateful child. Below her post were endless comments from people who had no idea what really happened. Oh, sad, kids these days don't appreciate their parents at all. You lived off her mom for years and now does this? Unbelievable. I can't imagine how heartbreaking this must be for you. A bitter anger bubbled up inside me. I had endured their favoritism for years. I had stayed quiet while they gave Madison everything, while I was left to fend for myself. I had walked away silently, but they still wouldn't leave me alone. My mother wanted to paint me as the villain? Fine, then I would tell the truth. I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and started typing. Since my mother has chosen to make this public, I think I have the right to share the truth. I am not the ungrateful daughter she is portraying me as. I didn't leave out of selfishness. I left because I was forced to. I spent my entire childhood watching Madison, my stepfather's daughter, be favored over me again and again. When Madison got to attend a private school, I was told, "Public school is good enough for you." When Madison had designer clothes, I wore clearance rack items. When I earned straight A's, no one cared. But if Madison accomplished even the smallest thing, it was a celebration. And when I received a full-ride scholarship to college, my family wasn't proud. They didn't congratulate me. They didn't ask me what I wanted for my future. Instead, they demanded that I give up my college fund, the money my grandmother left for me, so that Madison could attend an expensive school. When I refused, I was called selfish. And then, they threw me out on my 18th birthday. I didn't choose to leave, I was forced to leave. So before anyone calls me ungrateful, think again, because maybe the truth isn't as simple as the story my mother is trying to sell. I hit post and waited. At first my post only got a few likes, but within an hour the number had grown to hundreds. People started sharing it. I received a message from one of my old teachers. "I always knew you were a hardworking student, Emily. I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself." Some neighbors left comments. I always wondered why Emily was treated differently. Now it all makes sense. The people who had defended my mother slowly went silent. Some even deleted their comments. That evening, I got a call from my mother. I stared at the screen, watching her name flash, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I blocked her number. I didn't owe them anything anymore. My life officially began the day I unlocked the door to my tiny apartment for the first time. It wasn't big, just a small studio with a single bed, a desk by the window and a tiny kitchenette. But it was mine. A place I could finally call home without walking on eggshells around favoritism or unfair accusations. I spent the afternoon unpacking, carefully arranging my things. Inside an old box, I found a photograph of Grandma Margaret, sitting in her garden, her warm smile as gentle as ever. I placed it on my desk, right next to a small lamp. Looking at it, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. She knew I would need this. She had planned for my freedom, even when she wouldn't be here to see it. The next few days passed quickly. I started my part-time job at the cafe. The owner, a middle-aged man named Mike, was kind. He didn't ask about my past. He just gave me morning shifts, and occasionally let me take home leftover pastries at the end of the day. In the evenings, I sat at my desk, going over my college enrollment papers. The fund Grandma Margaret had left me was enough to cover my education for the next 4 years, but I decided to keep my job anyway. I wanted to take care of myself. I wanted to know I could stand on my own, without anyone else's help. I also cut off all contact with my mother, Daniel, and Madison. They were no longer part of my life. I didn't want to receive another guilt-tripping message from my mother, another lecture about how I had betrayed my family. For years I had fought for a place in that family, but the truth was, I had never really belonged there. And I no longer cared. One afternoon, while cleaning up at the cafe, my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. "Emily, I just want to say I admire you. I went through something similar, and I know how painful it is. Stay strong." I was surprised to see that my post was still being shared. Strangers were reaching out to me, telling me that my story had helped them feel less alone. I couldn't change my past, but if it gave someone else the courage to stand up for themselves, maybe everything I had been through was worth it. A few weeks later, I stood at the gates of my university. The place where my new life would truly begin. No more comparisons to Madison, no more walking on eggshells around my mother, no more feeling invisible or unworthy. I stepped forward with the unwavering belief that I was finally on my own path, no longer in anyone's shadow. And with every step, I felt lighter than ever before. Emily's story is not just about escaping family injustice. It's a lesson in self-worth and independence. In life, not everyone who carries the title of family truly loves us. Sometimes, we have to accept that not everyone is worth our sacrifice. Emily chose her own path, leaving behind toxic relationships to build a future where she was free to make her own choices. Her story is a reminder that we have the right to protect what is ours, even if it means walking away alone. What do you think about Emily's story? Have you ever experienced favoritism or unfairness in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, life, and the lessons we all need to learn.